Hey, welcome back guys. Last time we left we had these two buttons here which didn't do anything just yet. We also had a scroll button over here which is going to pretty much put us in our scene. So if you remember, this is the level selection, and on the left on this side is the shop. So there's nothing in there just yet, and we're not gonna tackle this, not in this episode at least. We're really gonna focus on getting this button to transfer us to the game, basically. So what we're gonna do actually is we are going to create ourselves a resource folder. Now you're gonna see why we use the resource folder just a little bit later on, but right now let's just go ahead and create ourselves a folder inside the project tab here. So project folder, and let's call this resources. Make sure you do no mistakes in this because it is going to be used by Unity and it needs to have this name. Now inside of that resource folder we are going to create ourselves another folder that we're simply going to call either levels or scene or whatever you want. I'm going to call mine levels with an S, and this is pretty much where we are going to put our levels. And actually we're not going to put our levels inside of that, we're going to put thumbnails, simply thumbnails. And using the thumbnail's name, we are going to load a scene. So pretty much what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and drag and drop any kind of image you have, and we're going to put that in our level. So I'll right click on this folder, hit show in Explorer, and I'll just go ahead and double click on levels, and right here let's just go ahead and create ourselves an image, 16 by 9 if possible, because that's the size of our thumbnail. So if you want to go ahead and just create something in Paint real quick, it doesn't have to be beautiful just yet. We're not doing the art of this thing just yet, but I'm going to go ahead and just make it in Paint. And now if I remember correctly, you have to go inside of, resize over here. And let's make this a 16 by 9 pixels. So I'll go ahead and make it say 920 by 1080. Okay. And that's pretty much really, that's HD, which is a little bit too much actually. Let's go ahead and put it on 1280 by 720. And now I'll just put this color in the background and maybe put some text in maybe white. And this is level 1. Okay. As you can see, this is not you don't have to put a lot of time in this. We just need some kind of thumbnail. Okay, let's save this in our folder. So I'll just go back where this is. So it is in the resource folder, level, and now we're gonna name this. This is going to be the same exact name you're going to have to use for your scene. So I'll just call mine, say, 1_training. Now if we go back inside of Unity, you should see your thumbnail over here in your asset, resource, level, and then here is your thumbnail. Okay, we actually have something in there. So now what we're going to do is we are going to start coding a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and tell this script, go look inside of this folder and pretty much make me a button for every single thumbnail you see. In this case we only have one, so we're only going to create one button. Okay, so to do that, let's go ahead and create ourselves a folder. This is going to be our script folder, and let's just make sure it is outside of our resource folder. And for our very first script, we are going to create a main menu script. So new C# script, I'm going to call this main menu, and let's open it inside of MonoDevelop or Visual Studio if you prefer. I'll be using MonoDevelop for this tutorial and pretty much every single tutorial on this channel. And yeah, as always, we are going to clean it up. Let's just leave it like that. So this is nice. We're going to be using UI, so we might need to include the Unity engine.ui up here. And I'm not sure if we're going to be using it or not, but let's just put it here for now. And now what we need to do, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need a button reference. So we pretty much need to have something we can look at when we want to spawn our new buttons. So let's make this a public game object, and let's call it level button prefab. Okay. Now if we minimize this, go ahead and put your main menu script on a empty game object. So I go ahead and create myself a empty game object, call this main menu. I'll reposition it at the origin of the world, so here, maybe put a icon on it so we can see it. And I will now go ahead and drag and drop my main menu script right on top of that. So as you can see, our public field, so our level button prefab, is now shown in the inspector. We need to assign it before we can continue scripting. Well, not really, but we're going to do it first. So this is pretty much the button we want to use. This is a good template we can work on right now. So what we're going to do is we are going to select this button, and make sure you don't select the container, just select this one, drag and drop it inside of your project folder, and this is going to create a prefab. Now the prefab means you can pretty much just reinitialize it whenever you want. So if I was to delete this guy over here, I can simply take this button, drag and drop it, and it's pretty much the same thing as it was before. So you can pretty much drag as much as you want, and they all have the same reference. So if you modify one, you're pretty much going to modify every single one of these. So before we actually put it as a reference, we're going to rename this in our project folder. Let's go ahead and make this level button prefab. And I'll also create another folder for that. So create a prefab folder, and I'll simply drag and drop this right in here. Okay, now if we keep going, we can select our main menu again and drag and drop our new level button prefab right inside this field. Now our main menu should have a reference to this very object, so it should be really easy to spawn. If we go back in our code, now that we have our button, we actually need a container. We need some place to spawn it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another public game object, and we're going to call it level button container. So let's do the exact same thing we did before. Let's minimize this. Go on our main menu. As you can see, we now have a new field, which is unassigned. We are going to drag and drop the level button container right inside of that new field. Also, make sure that there is no button in here. I cleaned mine a little bit earlier on, so make sure that your button that was here before, make sure it's gone by simply deleting the button, not the container. Now in our main menu, we have the prefab to spawn, and we also have the prefab's position, not position but container. So we are now ready to go ahead and start coding our mechanic. Below the field I just declared, I am going to create myself a private void start, and this is the typical start callback from Unity, so you're not allowed to make any mistakes in this. Make sure the S is also capitalized, and this is going to be run when we start the game. So inside of this function, what we're going to do is we're actually going to tell Unity before everything happens, well actually when we start the game, go ahead and look inside of my resource folder, so this folder over here, and then look inside of level and get me every single objects inside of that folder. We are going to create an array of every single thumbnails we have, so that's the very first step. Let's go ahead and make a sprite array, because we're going to be using these thumbnails as 2D objects for UI, so we're going to make sure it is a sprite. So let's go ahead and start by writing sprite, and then you open up the square bracket, because this is going to be an array. Let's call it not sprites but thumbnails is equal to resources. Now this is a class from Unity, so this is going to pretty much allow you to control the resource folder, and that is why we need to name it a resource. Now, if the next function does not work for you once you're playing the game, it might be because the resource folder is named wrong. So resource.load all, so we're going to load every single resource as a type sprite, and then it's going to take a path parameter. Now we are starting from the resource folder, so we don't need to type in resource. We actually only need to tell which folder we are looking at inside our resource folder. So as you can see, this is the resource folder, and we are looking at the level folder. So make sure this is written the same exact way as the name of your folder. Okay, so in my case, level. And if we close this off, we should now have an array of every single thumbnails inside of that very folder. And let's go ahead and press start on this. I have a feeling that it's not going to work just yet. And okay, so maybe it works, but there is one thing that we did wrong, and we are going to fix it right now actually, is every single thumbnail we import our PNG image, and that is not going to work for 2D. Well, it could work if we're using a raw image and we're just simply displaying a PNG, but that's not what we want to do. Since we don't really want to have any performance issues, we have to make sure that we stay optimized a little bit. So we're not going to be loading this full image as a PNG, we're going to make a sprite out of it. So before we keep coding, let's go ahead and just click on our image. In my case, it is the one_training. And if we go in the inspector up here, it says texture type. We're going to modify that and make sure it is a sprite. And as you can see, it is sprite for 2D and a UI, which is exactly what we're going to be using it for anyway. So click on this. And now I'm pretty much just going to keep these settings, and now we're going to hit apply down here. So now your texture just became a sprite, and we can load it here. Okay, so once we have these sprite in our thumbnail array, what we're going to do is we are actually just going to make a for loop. Or actually, let's make it a for each. So for each sprite that we're going to call, say, sprite, or maybe thumbnail with no S. So for each thumbnail in thumbnails with an S, so for every single element thumbnail in this array, or actually every single sprite in this sprite array, we are going to create ourselves a new button. So game object that I'm going to call container is going to equal instantiate, and we're going to instantiate the level button prefab as a game object. Now we just created a new button. We want to go ahead and change its background image for the thumbnail. So we're going to do go, or actually not go, but container, which is the name of our object, dot get component. We are getting the image component of that game object. And if we go back in our level button prefab here, so this is the component we are getting, the image component. And this image component has a source image that we want to change. So in order to access this one, we're going to do dot sprite, and this is pretty much the sprite that is used to render this image. Now this is going to equal thumbnail with no S. Make sure you're taking the one with no S. And I think that is pretty much it actually. Let's go in game and see our result. If we press play on this and we look around in the game scene, you're not going to see your thumbnail, and the reason is it is a UI element, but it's not inside the canvas. If you remember, the canvas is the UI container that we renamed before. So just to preview it right now, what I'll do is I'll just drag and drop this inside of my level selection and then level button container. And as you can see, this is our first button positioned at a really odd place because it has some wrong setting up here. We also need to remove this button text. So we have some kind of cleaning up to do on the prefab. Let's go ahead and see what we have to clean up first. So rotation up here, if we put that on 0, it already makes a little bit more sense. Now if we put the position Z on 0 as well, It also makes more sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and clean this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our button prefab inside the prefab folder. Let's go ahead and make sure that the text component inside of it, not the text component, but the text object inside of it is gone. So I'm going to delete that. And you are not allowed to do it from inside the project folder. So we are going to put one in the scene anywhere over here. Now we're going to remove the text component. So press delete, continue, and then select your level button prefab again and hit apply. Now it should be clean. And all we have to do now is make sure that whenever we spawn it, it actually goes in the button container. Right now we just spawn it like that and it's not even rendered because it's not under the canvas. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that whenever we spawn it, it goes here. Okay. Now if we go back inside our code, what we're gonna tell this guy is we're gonna say container of that button. I named my thing a little bit wrong, but container.transform.setParent, and the parent of that object is going to be the level button container. Now let's hit save on that, hit play again, and it says that it cannot be a okay, so we have to say level button container.transform, because you have to set a transform as a parent and not the game object itself. Okay. Again, let's hit play on this. And we're almost there, so it is at the right place, but the position.z is wrong. And the rotation is also wrong. So how exactly are we going to fix this? So while looking at the web a little bit, I found out that this function over here, the setParent function, also has a overload that allows you to keep the position of the local position. So the overload is pretty much just taking a additional boolean which says if true, the parent relative position is pretty much just kept. So if we put that on false, our object is going to change his world position. So right now our object is being spawned around here. And when it is being spawned, it just stays there, and after that we assign this very object, the one that, our thumbnail, we assign it to this guy as a children. But he stays over here, and that is the issue. Now what we just did is, we told him, do not stay where you are, so do not keep your world position, just assume the position of your parent. In this case, the level button container. So when we hit play on this, it is now positioned at the pretty much 0, 0, 0, but it's assuming its parent position. And that's pretty much it, actually. Now, just to test this out, what we're going to do is I'm going to go back inside my Explorer and I'm going to duplicate this just to show you what it gives us. So if we would duplicate this and we hit play on this, we might have an error actually. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're also going to convert all of these into sprite. Hit apply. Now this is a result we get actually. So for every single of the thumbnail, we actually have a button for that now, and as you can see, it's pretty much just buttons, and we can scroll through them. And that's going to be it for this episode, guys. In the next one, what we're going to do is we're actually gonna put a function on top of that button click, and we are going to tell them once you click on me, go ahead and load the scene that is directly related to my button name. So we're gonna have a scene called 1_training, and when we press on this thumbnail, it's going to load that very scene. So I'm just going to clean this up, remove all the copy, and we are going to end this video here, and then, like I said, in the next one we're going to actually make this button work. So guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, it really helps out. If you have any question or comment, please leave them in the comment section below. Also subscribe for more tutorial. Again, thanks for watching, and I will be seeing you in the next episode.